All right. So this discussion is going to be all about how to love people when it's difficult to do so. In general, I call this topic love dragons because there's people in life that you love, but if you get too close, they tend to burn you in various ways. And it's an ongoing challenge. It's like, what is the right thing to do? Should I be setting boundaries? How does that look? Is there any way I can help them in a practical sense? So there's just a lot of confusion and suffering that tends to go along with this topic. And it's a timeless, classic topic with timeless classic wisdom that can help us. So we're going to go into great detail on some of the wisdom and correctives of perspectives that can help us navigate this territory when we've got difficult people to love in our life. So let's just talk about what examples there might be of situations where it is difficult to love. Like we can do like I go, you go. Like I'll come up with a category, you come up with a category, right?
Sure.
So one would be, loving somebody who gets moody a lot and takes it out on other people.
That's a good one. I was thinking more so like in a work setting, like trying to like love someone who maybe has like a different like managing method as you, like micromanaging or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. So somebody who might be just putting a little bit too much pressure on you, and sometimes people make, here's another example, loving somebody who keeps making harsh, false accusations about other people.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Loving someone who has like expectations of like what you want to do, like like tries to control your life, maybe like controlling.
Demanding and possessive. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Another thing could be, loving somebody who is unwilling to participate in their own self-understanding. So they refuse to correct their misperceptions, and they refuse to let others correct their misperceptions. So they might be difficult because they've got a wrong view of what's going on in reality, and as a result, their feelings are wrong. But
Right.
they're
Right.
unwilling to understand that and participate in that.
I don't know if this kind of goes under your category too, but even in terms of like loving someone who like doesn't love themselves or isn't like dealing I don't know how to say this one, but maybe like not taking care of themselves or like not doing the steps to take care of themselves.
Yeah, somebody who might be self-sabotaging.
Yes.
And
Yes.
have insecurity. Yeah. Another thing could be loving somebody who has sworn themselves as your enemy, even though you haven't done anything wrong to them, but they've,
Right.
Decided you and I are enemies, right?
Right. All good ones.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, we're probably good there. I'm not gonna,
okay.
there's other situations like I've seen somebody dating somebody who's got a really difficult child. And so that relationship can be difficult because, difficult family obligations and stuff get thrown into the mix. So
Yeah.
a number of the things we want to do is we want to, first of all, come to peace with why this is happening in our life. So what are some reasons this might be happening for our benefit? What do you think?
Had to be like surrounded by these different types of characters that you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And having to deal with this discomfort.
I would say like it develops your own character too, right? Like even just being able to, it challenges you in terms of like your beliefs, your values. It challenges you to like learn more about yourself too. Because if we were all the same, I think it would be really boring, right?
Yes. Yeah, great point. This prevents boredom, because if there was no challenges and conflict ever in life, we would be bored out of
Right.
our minds. That's why all the movies that entertain us always have a theme of overcoming a great challenge and conflict, right?
Right.
I think also that it can help us self-realize our higher potential. We learn patience, we learn humility, we learn compassion, and it has to be uncomfortable for us so that we don't remain at our current level of development. If it were comfortable, we would be happy as is, but that's not really why we're here. We're here to self-realize. And so we need the uncomfortable situations that push us to progress, right?
Hey, that's a beautiful statement. Well said.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's just, but I think that's a healthy way to look at all these challenges and why they're happening.
Right.
And I think, it's important to be delicate with this topic, um, because, we want to make people feel they're worthwhile, and we want to,
Of
in this
course.
situation, we want to not make things worse. And sometimes there's various ways we'll have to consider how to do that. So I think the first solution in this, when you're dealing with somebody difficult to love, is to seek first to understand what you can. Seek first to understand what you can. And what do you think I mean by that? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
This statement always sticks in my mind, that you said to me once, was like, sometimes we think we're like qualified to judge when we're not.
Mhm.
In the sense of like, sometimes when, like myself, for example, like we think we know everything, but we never really truly know what someone's experiencing like in their life, or, their full story and such. So sometimes I feel like just being a listener would help you understand them better as opposed to judging first.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, in learning to understand, we might realize that people, let's say somebody is doing evil.
Yeah.
They may not be doing evil intentionally. A lot of times people think the evil thing is a good thing. And, there's a good intention at the end of it. But
Right.
as the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The worst atrocities in human history had a good intention. So we don't want to use that as a justification and defend devilry by saying, oh, well, I only meant what's best for everybody. So they're confused ultimately, because
Mhm.
countless historical examples will show that evil actions end badly for the evildoer, and the evil actions, they don't last, right? So people do bad things because they are unwilling to learn better, really.
Right.
So they'll rationalize away the effects of it. So we want to think of them as kind of being maybe um, mentally or spiritually a little bit wounded and confused, right?
Do you think like one of the reasons like for that would be like because of the discomfort that comes with learning, I guess? Or
Yeah, you nailed it. So people don't tend to change until the pain of the unknown and the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same.
hmm, wow,
So
yeah.
typically people use feelings as their kind of navigation chart in life. And that can be a very big mistake, because our feelings are not always justified. And if we use our feelings as our life coach, we'll always do the comfortable thing instead of the progressive thing in life. And that's
Mhm.
a lesson we often learn the hard way. That's sloth. We tend to do what
Yes.
feels good instead of what is good. So we should be more concerned with truth and goodness than feelings, which can be confusing, because, smokers feel good when they smoke and bad when they don't. Doesn't mean smoking is good for you. So
Right.
people tend to be difficult and mean-spirited because they lack wisdom, right?
Mhm.
So but as humans, we are pro-social creatures, and mean-spirited actions go against our fundamental nature. And unwillingness to understand this dynamic will lead to tragic outcomes. Life will be the master disciplinarian for those who have committed bad actions against people, right? So I think one of the key things we want to address here is, we want to know what is the potential for the situation, right? So uh, I consider two important questions on this topic. Like, number one, are they capable of cooperating? Like, can they be reasoned with? A lot of people take great personal pride in sticking to their perspectives and resisting a change of mind. And they see it as a matter of personal strength and power. And so if they're in that situation, they may not be willing to take the next step. That would be the next question. Are they willing? Are they willing to participate in a greater understanding and see things from a higher perspective? Or do they still want to continue in this way? Right? It's kind of like this. Have you ever been to a wedding and seen somebody try to dance with somebody who doesn't want to dance.
Yes.
How did
Not
that
at a wedding,
go?
maybe at a club, but
Yeah, yeah. How does that generally go?
it's awkward for everybody.
Yes, it's awkward for everybody involved. So this is kind of like when we're trying to help somebody who isn't ready, able, or willing to be helped.
Yeah.
We have to see it in the same way, because what's going to happen is they're going to step all over your feet, and it's going to be painful for everybody. It's not going to be helpful to you. It's not going to be helpful to them. And
So true.
sometimes we need to accept that the wrong way can be the right way, because people learn more through the painful memories of having done things wrongly, and that in future, that gives them wisdom, and that wisdom helps them make better choices in future, and by making better choices they find a greater happiness.
Yeah.
But wrong choices can be the start of a process that ultimately leads to a greater happiness. So we have to learn to just accept that rather than judging the moment, which we tend to do. We'll judge the moment and be like, oh no, this person is confused and I need to help them right now and everything else.
Right.
So
Which ends up
anyway,
leaving a bigger mess, honestly. But
yeah. Because here's the thing: you're going to have different types of personalities. We're going to have narcissists, and a narcissist is unable to tolerate any hint of disapproval, so they live in fear of humiliation. And so they will lash out if anyone points out anything that they did wrong or hints at any opportunity for them to be better. They will try to attack and destroy people, right? So that can be very difficult, but they have to learn eventually that that doesn't work out. Then you've got like sociopaths who have tremendous capacity for deceit, and they're good at, you know, simulating emotions that they don't actually feel, pretending to be sorry. And, you got the pessimists who are always looking for the downside in life and the downside of circumstances, and they bring everyone down with them. It's kind of like a drowning person, and you go to save them and they're pulling you under, right?
right.
So we're going to need to know how to navigate some of these different territories appropriately. So step
Just
number one,
before, I just
sorry.
have a question. I have
Yeah.
a question for you. What would you say is um a good way to kind of like stop yourself in your tracks? Let's say if you're trying to help like a confused person. How do you stay grounded? Because obviously there's like a lot of emotions, and even like for someone like myself, I can think of a lot of like circumstances where I'm like, I know this intuitively, but then it's like almost like your emotions take over and I just instinctively act. Like what would you in
I
the
would,
moment, right? Because you're surrounded, like they're in front of you, like take a walk. Like you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
It's a
It's
hard.
like, I mean, you will want to find an anchor, something to a perspective to
Mm,
anchor yourself in. Now that's going to be unique to all of us, and I would
right.
say at the end of our conversation I would ask you to choose an anchor based
Yeah.
on what resonated most with you. um
Okay.
Now
That's fair.
I would say that, also it can be really helpful for point number 2, which is, rather than judging that the moment shouldn't be as it is, we should understand that they serve an important purpose right now, even if
Yeah.
we don't understand it at this moment, right? So we have to be able to accept that, everything is happening for a reason, even if we don't understand it, So, um, Gandhi once said that a good and wise God cannot be so bad and so unwise as to create a no purpose.
Right.
Meaning that, the creator would not be permitting this to happen if there wasn't a purpose, but perhaps it's not best for us to know the purpose just yet.
I feel
So
like that comes down to like faith.
yeah,
Like
yeah, faith can be
faith.
a great way to come to terms with it. And a good, I like to use the 5-step fix all. It's been a part of different discussions where you just say, is there a creator? Yes or no. Is the creator intelligent? Yes or no. And, we can find many examples of the intelligence just in living systems and ecosystems and everything. Is the creator loving? Yes or no. right? Just take a look at the ways we're supported through our heart that's beating for us, our immune system working for us, the people that have love in their hearts for us, who put that love in there for us, right? So so if the creator is, if there's a creator and the creator is loving and intelligent, won't it take care of its creation?
Yeah.
Right? Which is faith. We just have to let go of our egotistical tendency to think that we know how things should go.
Right.
But we don't see across all space and time. So we have to be at peace with the fact that we are not the director of this cosmic drama. We are actor and audience. So
Know your role.
yeah. So it's kind of like, hey, are we playing God and saying, no, you weren't supposed to write it like that? So
Right.
that can be a big part of it is, and then a big part of it is just realizing that those who push our buttons can often teach us what we haven't mastered in ourselves yet. So they can be our greatest teachers, right? So, if there wasn't a person in your life like the one who's creating difficulty, then it would probably be necessary for the creator to create another one exactly like them for your benefit. Like
It's true. No, it's definitely true. I mean, if you think back to like the most like pivotal aspects of your life, it usually comes from that like trouble, either like person or that challenge. So you're 100% right.
yeah, it's a stepping stone to a greater good. And the villain is created in movies so that we can love the hero and see the hero's greatness come out.
Right.
Right. So I always think of Gandalf the Grey in Lord of the Rings when Frodo is judging Gollum and saying, why don't we just kill him and get rid of him? And Gandalf stops him and he's like, who are you to judge? Right? Like Gollum has a role to play in the overall scheme of things, which
Right.
proved to be true in the end. Right? So we just have to get past that tendency of judging the moment. Like a lot of these people that are difficult can free us from ego consciousness and over identification with this body and the earth. And suffering purges us from delusion. We don't get so attached to this unreal reality because of the discomfort.
Mhm.
So the other thing is, a lot of the times the people that are difficult, they might tell you things that your best friends won't tell you about opportunities, hidden faults and weaknesses you have. Right? I mean, sure, difficult people will often make stuff up, but when they aren't, sometimes their criticisms might be more honest than what we're getting from other people. They might rub our edges smooth,
Right.
So and I think one thing to do in terms of understanding a purpose is take everything you don't like about what this person's doing and translate it to an unmet need you have in yourself, because that's what they're really reflecting back to you.
Mhm.
You might have a need for security and predictability, and that's what they're kind of agitating, right?
Hmm. Can you repeat what you just said?
All right,
Take.
I'm gonna take everything you don't like about what
Okay.
this person is doing
Hmm.
and translate it to an unmet need in yourself.
Okay. That's really interesting.
Because they are mirroring it back to you.
That is very interesting. I like that.
Right. So yeah, so that's something to think about too, and to take time and reflect on
Right.
after this. So, we're also given the opportunity to control our judgments. It's so quick, it's so easy to make judgments about people, but really this is about patterns, not people. So we want to be able to differentiate at all times rather than judging people as good or bad. It's the patterns that might be, good or bad. So yeah. So in that way we are, well, there's our our discomfort over the situation has a lot to do with how we've judged the situation, which means in many ways we're responsible in more ways than we might realize for what's going on. Now let's go on to number 3, discussion point number 3. Okay. Why is it a bad idea to hate? Why is it a bad idea to hate on anybody?
The most simple answers, because it also doesn't make you feel good for any
Doesn't
party.
feel good. Yeah.
No one feels good hating. Let's be real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It doesn't feel good. So for our own benefit, it's not a good idea.
yeah. I just think it's a dark lens to have.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a dark lens. And I feel like when you kind of like portray that all the time, that hate, you also attract it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's kind of like it creates the funeral of our higher potential, right? Because we start to develop lack of compassion. I think whenever we see somebody that might be morally sick, as Yogananda said, we could just remind ourselves, but for the grace of God, there goes myself. If we had been through everything they'd been through, we might act the same, right? We need to remember that we're all connected, that hatred will never cease by hatred, as the Buddha once said.
Mm.
It can only cease by love. But most importantly, Peace Pilgrim once said that hate injures the hater, not the hated. It's like a cancer of the soul, right? So we've got to realize that it doesn't make sense. And then for those who believe in the doctrine of reincarnation, what will happen is those people that you hate in this lifetime, you will likely reincarnate as family members because of the desire to have that conflict and that and to be able to work things out
That's
in
very
close
interesting.
proximity. Yeah.
That is
So
very interesting.
if you hate them, you'll be stuck with them in a future lifetime. For those,
Fix it now.
and even Jesus once said, if you use the sword, you'll fall by the sword. Right. So we've been warned about this stuff that, wrath and hatred really accomplish nothing in the long term. Yogananda says you may cow down somebody, but once they have risen again, they will try to destroy you. Then how have you conquered them? You haven't. Right. The only way to conquer is by love. And, you might have to be silent or get away and pray for them because it might not be safe to love them in close quarters, in close proximity. Right. But, if the way we're handling it doesn't bring us inner peace, then we're not handling it as best we could.
Of course. There's
And
room
so,
for opportunity for sure.
yeah. And Vivekananda, he once said, "He who hates none is a friend to all." So what would we rather be? What will bring
Right.
us more happiness? So let's go on to number 4. Number 4 is why love? Why choose love instead?
Again, simple. It feels better. And I
Yeah.
feel like the world needs more of it too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The power of love to change people is one of the most underrated things. As Peace Pilgrim says, every single person on this earth has a spark of good, even the meanest, scariest person you can think of. It might be buried deep down, but if you can get to that spark and help it grow, then you can do some true good. It's kind of like, I think of the movie The Grinch, when they helped the Grinch's heart grow, and then all of a sudden he was a friend and not an enemy. And that was a true victory, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's going to feel better. It's going to be, we can't really understand them until we love them. What is not loved is not understood, because we're separating ourselves from them too much. And if we decide to play the role of the villain in hate, then ultimately in this cosmic drama, we're going to have to receive the villain's punishment. But if you play the role of the saint, then you can realize the rewards of that. So, but I think also, like when wrongdoings are treated with compassion on some level, it's rather than harsh condemnation. That's how you break cycles of conflict and suffering, ultimately in the end, right? But I think, a big thing is like, who do we want to be in this world? Do we want to be somebody that just hates on people? Like, do we want to play that villain role?
Yeah. For sure.
And I think that's the only way, by loving is the only way to bring the healing rays of love into their, into their heart. So, um, yeah. So why don't we go into thinking about how can we love, like how to love people like that? What are your thoughts on that? How do you love difficult people? And I should probably specify that you don't have to love their evil actions.
Yeah,
Like
that's a big one.
you don't have to love that. You can hate their evil actions for sure, but just recognize them as actions. But recognize that within them, there's divinity within them. That, a saint is a sinner that never gave up. And all of us have that potential inherent to us for creating goodness. And so we can try to honor that true potential within them, right?
Honestly, I think a way to stay grounded in that and like the different ways of loving someone too, I think would be just like knowing that they're doing the best they can with what they have right now.
Yeah,
That's
that's
something
very
you always say to me, but I feel like that would be something to remind yourself of, because it's like at the end of the day, we're all like we're all human, like we're all the same, we're all human, we're doing the best that we can, and just staying at, like, even you always mention the word potential. I think that one's a really powerful, like their human potential, like it's always there, like you can love their potential, love that they're owning where they are right now,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
respect them for it, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that Yogananda once said is that if you can see God equally in your friends and your enemies, then it's a testimony to your spiritual realization.
Okay.
So if you can see God equally in all and see God in every face, then it means you really are realizing the purpose behind everything. And, you might love them for the fact that they are here to put up with their own mental hell and discomfort for your benefit. They've taken on this hard assignment in life's drama of living with their difficult thoughts and emotions so that those around them, through discomfort, may be driven to self-realize and attain perfection of character through a greater wisdom and understanding, and to learn those unlearned lessons, and to learn how to get in touch with the inherent character strengths of patience and compassion and resourcefulness.
That's so true. Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like they took on an uncomfortable role in this spiritual drama. Like we should be able to honor that and love that, right?
It's, yeah, I never really looked at it that way, but yeah, somebody's got to play villain, right? And it's not an easy
Yeah.
role, even though you might think like they're taking the easier route. It's like, oh no, but they're suffering, right? Like,
Yeah, and I think ultimate victory is when somebody hurts you, to bless them, even silently and
yeah,
privately, if you must, rather than choose revenge.
of course.
And Jesus basically said that in a very memorable way. Bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which, you know, persecute you, right? So I
Yeah.
think just salute the divinity within them and send them love is how you can do it. We'll talk about some of the practical ways to do this in a real life setting, because
Right.
some people will be like, yeah, but what does that look like if, you have to face this person and everything else? And, you know,
Brennan, you brought up a really good point, like in the sense of like detaching from their actions.
yeah,
I guess like, and I guess we kind of answer that too, is just like, how do you like love someone that way? But like, I find it like really difficult to detach from like someone's actions when, like, let's say they like disrespect you, or like not disrespect, but it's like sometimes like certain individuals, they really challenge you, but they know which like buttons to push, and
yeah.
then they push them, and it's just, I feel like those are the moments that it's like so incredibly hard to just not to like hold on to that like love and compassion, right?
Yeah, yeah. You know what? I mean, a good way to think about it is, look, they are just exercising their right of free will. We don't have to like it, but
Right.
People have a right to be stupid if they want to. They're exercising their God-given right to come here and be stupid, right? Like, and then learn from the stupidity. But that's how we learn best. They're not done their experiment
Sure.
with mean-spirited choices, right? Like, they're learning for themselves what works and what doesn't work. It's like in the same way that we don't judge a baby for, going to the bathroom at an untimely moment, right? We need to realize that we expect too much of adults, that, they might be physically mature, but
Hmm.
emotionally and spiritually, they might be very infantile.
Yeah.
Now, the challenge lies when we take our preferences for how people should be. We would prefer they be more advanced because life would be easier and different if they were. And so we make that our expectation. But the truth is, they are not more advanced. We've given them too much credit. We've expected too much of them. You'll be surprised how stupid people can be, right? But we need to be realistic in this. It's
Yeah.
it,
No.
it's just
Yep.
it's not as easy to see it when somebody is emotionally like a 5-year-old when they're in a, adult body, right? So we need to manage our own
Yeah.
expectations is what it comes down to. It's like we're giving people too much credit, right? So that's one way to do it, is realize
Okay.
like, oh my gosh, I confused my preferences for my expectations. I just didn't want it to be uncomfortable for me. But the truth is, we don't know what's good for us. It was the uncomfortable stuff that helped us learn and grow the most in life, right? If we always had things easier and different, we'd have like spoiled rich kid syndrome. So we don't know what's good for us.
Right.
Then being like this right now benefits us in many ways. We hate to admit it because too often we vilify discomfort, but we need to learn how to see it differently. The same way that in weightlifting, you learn to love the burn because you know what it means. It means you're getting better, right? So when things in life burn us, as long as we ask ourselves, what's good about this? What can I learn? And how can I make it better? Then we can learn to love that burn and know that it's just an inescapable stage of development we're going through, and that we will be wiser and better on the other side of this thing.
Very true. Very true.
So I think, it can also be helpful to see them as another version of you that if you've been through everything they've been through in their entire life story, you would make the same decisions they're making now. Why? Because they just did, right? You know, it can also be helpful to just see the best in them.
Of course.
Like they're temporarily air intoxicated, but they still have the potential for virtue inside them. Just consider them a divine brother or sister that might be sleeping at the moment with their divinity.
Right.
But at any point they could wake up and go from sinner to saint, right? Like some of the most evil men in human history have changed into saints. Like, let's not remember, men or women, right? So you can think about all of the good things about the person that might have hurt you. You know, maybe you like the way they dress. Maybe you like the way they protect and care about people in their life. Maybe you like how driven they are and how passionate they are. And maybe you like that they don't cut you off in traffic, or they don't hack into your email account, or that they don't trash talk you on blogs or whatever. Maybe you like things that they're not doing that they could be doing if they wanted to, that they don't steal your wallet. Like, you could really make a huge list here and be like, you know what? I do appreciate that person more. Maybe you like how they're good and they water plants and they're good to
Yeah.
animals and whatever, right? So we can challenge ourselves to see the best in them. The reward is that when we challenge ourselves to see the best in them, we find a greater peace within ourselves. That's the reward.
That's a big reward, right?
And it
That's
might be difficult to say, I don't want to do that. And it's like, well, you decide when you're done with your hate experiment then.
Mhm.
Because right now, how is it working out for you to be bitter and resentful towards other people? It's like, all right, so step number 6 is let it be, release the desire to fix them.
Mhm.
All right. Now, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this subject? Let it be, release the desire to fix them.
Um, I feel like it's something we've heard and we know, but then when it comes to it, we don't do.
Yeah, there's a knowing doing gap there for sure.
There's a big
We
gap.
don't know it in our bones yet. We haven't assimilated
Yes.
it in our atoms, right?
Yeah. But honestly, even you just saying this, the saying like that statement, it's already like alleviating, I'm sure, to anyone listening, even like just let it be. It's like, oh, like you forget that's an option, you know?
Yeah.
The resistance is like, I feel like sometimes we almost like always, not, I shouldn't say we as if I'm talking on behalf, but you know, in general, sometimes it's more innate to just resist as opposed to just let it be, right?
And the resistance comes from a part in us that needs healing,
Right. Yeah,
right?
no,
And
I believe that for sure.
that part could be a wrong judgment or a wrong thought,
Mhm.
something we're telling ourselves that's getting us worked up, that's not, and it's not a good idea for us to think that way. And there is a more empowering, healing way to look at it. So, I think a lot of times with Let It Be, we just need to trust, learn to appreciate the gifts that suffering brings, like we need to trust the process, trust that
Yes.
a higher power is involved, trust that the truth can make it on its own. The truth doesn't need us to be the messenger of truth.
Right.
We are not the only path up the mountain for this person to be helped. The truth knows where they live, and truth and salvation does not run on our timeline. We have no idea. You can't rip the skin off the snake. It has to molt the skin in its own time. And then we have to accept that there's more than one path to the same destination. And we don't necessarily know the best path because we don't know all paths. We don't see across all space and time, but our ego can get in and judge and be like, if they just listen to me now, we can get past this. If they just do what I tell them to do, and everything will just be easier for everybody. And it's like, that might not be the best path. That might be the best path, but we don't know everything.
Definitely don't know everything. Definitely don't.
You can't force it on people, because even if you try to change them now and give them too much truth now, and they're not ready to receive it, then later on they'll be less inclined to respect the truth, because they'll be like, oh, I already heard that before and it didn't work back then. And they'll dismiss it.
Right.
So,
So many really good points.
it's really our selfish preference for reality that is the root of our suffering.
No, you're 100% right.
But it's when it comes to these difficult people, and in many ways they're giving us an assist in our own development, and we're not even saying thank you for it.
Well,
We're
even
flipping,
like,
it's like, hey, we're flipping them the bird on the assist,
it's no, you're 100% right. It's definitely like we live from the inside out versus the outside in, and that's something you can forget easily, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think a big part of it too is there's all kinds of lessons here, and one of them that comes from Lahiri Mahashaya was that, we should know that we can't necessarily depend on even the nearest family members and relations we have in our life. We can be betrayed by all, right? Of friends, relatives, everything else. But, our only true reliable relationship is with the Atman, Soul Supreme, or God, whatever you want to call it, right? So we can learn healthy detachment to these human relationships, because it's like we're all in a spiritual school and we're all at different grade levels.
Yeah.
And so we're lumped together with grade ones and university graduates and high schoolers and kindergartens. And it's just like spiritually, everyone's at a different grade level and we're all lumped together and, somehow trying to find harmony in that. Right. So these things are going to happen. But we need to just challenge ourselves to see things from a higher perspective. Right. So life will be the master disciplinarian for people who make wrong choices. They'll be made uncomfortable in their circumstances. One of the biggest symptoms of it is called mental anguish.
Mm-hmm.
People are just living incorrectly and they refuse to change their ways. They experience a lot of mental anguish. That's usually the first sign. Moodiness is another. Moodiness is they're just really frustrated with the state of things, and life isn't going the way it should, according to them in their own mind, right? And they get moody and they can become very standoffish, and that just means that they have not concluded this experiment yet. It seems inevitable they will. Like, you know what? Why live this way? I can't be happy living this way. I'm going to try on a new attitude, like trying a new piece of clothing. Maybe this attitude will be a better fit for me. You know, I'm trying to squeeze into this attitude, and it's just so uncomfortable to look at life this way. So I think here's some good reflection questions for leaving it be. Number one, are we guilty of trying to help people who aren't ready to be helped? You know, like I said, are they capable of being helped? Are they willing to be helped? A good rule of thumb on this is if you're trying to help somebody, and it's been now a year and they refuse right understanding when it's offered to them, then it's best just to let them be. That's when we can just hand it back to God and say, all right, God, you can deal with this then.
You got this.
Clearly it's not this is not, you know, and this comes from Yogananda. Clearly this is not my mission. So my mission is to actually set a healthy boundary, you know?
Yeah.
Number two is this. Number two
Oh,
is,
that was a good one.
how might this be more about your issues and needs than theirs?
Yep.
You know, do we want this as a way to heal a part of ourselves? You know, to feel like we're making a positive difference. We're adding value to the world because we're helping this difficult person. And, you know, like, do we want this to distract ourselves from something we should be addressing within us? You know, also, like, think about this. Is our desire to change people or help, can that come off as manipulative or a desire to control?
Yeah, of course.
You know, might it send the message that other people are unacceptable as they are? You know, rather than unconditional love and acceptance, right? So number 4 would be, do we assume we know what's best for them? Are we imposing our agenda and our timelines? And the honest question is, do we really know what's best for anybody? My answer would be no in every situation.
I never knew what was best for me.
Yeah, I know.
Still
I don't
don't.
know how many times. I don't know how many times I've had an opinion and it turned out to suck. It was like, what I didn't want ended up benefiting me more than I wanted in my life, right? Like, it's like, you know, so we've got to be careful on that front. And, you know, here's something to think about. Is it possible that what is best right now is that they don't want or need your help? Is it possible they need to struggle or suffer more and that they are healing in their own way, in their own time? Something to think about. And another thing is this. Is it possible that they are more capable than we give them credit for? If they were 10 out of 10 motivated, could they not figure things out? You know, like, if they made it their life purpose and they're going to pull all-nighters, stay up every night, all night, as long as it takes until they understand themselves and their life and how to harmonize with everyone and everything and how to achieve inner peace. Like, if they were really that highly motivated, which they could be, I mean, they've been motivated to be very difficult, right? If they were just motivated to be harmonious.
Shift gears.
Yeah, think about it. This is the way I encourage people to think about it. You might think of the most stubborn person in the world, okay? In your world, stubborn and difficult. And they are so committed to these arrogant or mean-spirited ways of being. Just imagine they switch those patterns for like unconditional love and compassion and patience and everything else with that level of commitment they've already demonstrated on the bad stuff. Think how powerful they could be if they flipped over to the good side. And just know that at all times, that's what you're dealing with.
Yep.
And that people usually have to go through hell before they find their way to heaven here, right? And that's when they really commit, is because they've lived the wrong way. It doesn't work. They're not doing it anymore. Now they're on this team, right? So the key thing is this, to give hope. The key thing is, ask yourself this: when there's somebody difficult in your life, okay, and let's say they're doing all kinds of hurtful things, Be honest. Are they truly, truly, totally happy and fulfilled? Yes or no?
The other person?
The person that's doing all the bad stuff. Are
Oh, of
they
course it's
truly?
no.
Okay, that means they don't belong on that team.
Yeah.
Because if they did belong on the dark side, doing everything mean-spirited and hurtful, they would be very comfortable and happy and fulfilled being like that, because that's in alignment with their true nature.
Gotcha.
So when somebody is acting in ways that are disharmonious and they're not
Yeah.
truly happy, it means that's not in alignment with their true nature. And so that can give you hope that, one, they'll never stay that way forever, because eventually they'll be sick of their sickness. And two, they don't belong on that team. That's why they can never be too comfortable playing for the bad guys, the dark side.
Yeah. You almost forget, like, it's uncomfortable being in their situation too, you know? Like, it's
Yeah.
that could derive a lot of compassion for sure. So
Yeah.
good point.
And then I think, number 7 would be, in what ways might we help heal more if we get out of the way? And sometimes that's the right answer.
It is. Yeah.
Sometimes that's the right answer. We want to be able to, we can give people help with practical suggestions, or we can give them unconditional love. It's that simple. Sometimes they're not open to the practical help. Sometimes, and if we are to give them practical help, you can get them to feel incredibly strong and powerful, and get them to believe in themselves, and then get them to associate past successes with the challenges they have in front of them now. Like, it's very easy once somebody is actually willing. But I think there's a couple of different things we can do to help, because a lot of times people are like, yes, but I do want to help. Fine. Here's some things. Number 1, make your life be an example for them that they can follow. If you really want to help another person change, the best way, and often the only way, is through our own example and a great deal of understanding and patience. We often think it is everyone else who must change, but first we have to change. We have to grow. We have to learn to
Of
control
course.
ourselves. So I think it's just like, set a better example. So that's how to help, number 1. How to help, number 2, is, go to war against evil patterns. Really go to war against the pattern of self-deception, right? Like, start with yourself. How do I lie to myself and tell myself stories? This is what I don't. That blue jay is so loud. Can you hear him?
Yeah, he's great.
I know.
Sounds like he has a
There's a
microphone.
little chipmunk there too. He's just like, are you looking at
There
him?
has been a number of birds behind you just nose diving off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
hilarious.
it's fun. I've got a group of about 8 blue jays, and when I come outside in the morning for sunrise, they all are on the eaves trough, and then they fly down, and then I give them peanuts, and
Cool.
they're there every morning now. Like, it's really cute. This group of blue
You're
jays.
the breakfast buffet.
I know. So, number 2 is go to battle with evil patterns. It's really like, there's all these negative tendencies we have inside of us: mental laziness, right? Jealousy, right? Arrogance, thinking we know things we don't know for sure, right? Anger. We should just view them all as opponents, and we should go to war against those by, first of all, understanding them and the weaknesses and how to overcome them all. It goes back to, the book, the Bhagavad Gita, which talks about the Pandavas and Kauravas. It's basically the good tendencies and the bad tendencies inside all of us. And to really take that inner battle more seriously, because really what we're experiencing is a bad tendency just being reflected through this relationship with another person. We should be going to battle with this tendency and understanding it. So, for example, if you're dealing with a narcissist, really understand narcissism, really learn everything you can about it, and really do your best not to embody any narcissistic tendencies, as an example, right? Go to battle with the patterns, but make it very impersonal. Any thoughts on that?
I think that's just like a very empowering way to go about things. It's like, learn everything you can about it,
Yeah. Yeah.
because at the end of the
Against the
day, you're not
patterns. Yeah.
just, yeah, you're not just gonna help yourself, and down the road you'll probably help even more, a bunch more people, right?
Yes. Yeah. And in that way, this person in their difficulty is an assist in a greater love you'll share with all, because when
Right.
you have greater wisdom to share with others, you can benefit suffering humanity to a greater degree. So
I like that.
another way to help is pray about it.
Hmm.
Just say, "Dear God, let me see this person the way you see this person." And leave it to God.
That's it.
Like,
Take the wheel.
basically don't change the
Yeah.
circumstances of, as Sri Gayanamata would say, don't change the circumstances of my life, change me instead.
You got all the best points today. You're on fire.
Oh, thank you. It's I
That's a
I
good
am
one.
on fire, but I am not the doer.
I
I'm just
know. I know.
referencing everybody who has contributed their love and wisdom so
I
that we
know.
can benefit from it.
Well, thanks to both of you.
So Jesus said this as well in Matthew. Jesus said, "Pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you," right? Just send them love, you know? Um William the Conqueror, following his victory at Hastings, apparently he sat up all night on the battlefield praying for the souls of those soldiers on both sides who had been slain. You know, way back in medieval England. I thought that was a beautiful story. That comes from Catherine Caravai's book, Two Souls, Four Lives. But
Wow.
yeah. So now the next thing we need to realize is this. Here's what I want you to think about. Like, uh, this comes from Ramakrishna, but it's that he says that God dwells in water. Now, some water can be used for divine service, drinking, bathing, washing, but some water can't be touched, right? Some water can be very dirty, and so we have to realize that God, like water, resides in all beings, but we should not mix with the people that are in a bad place right now and have been muddied up, right? Because some water we just can't touch without doing a greater harm to ourselves and without reinforcing them to in their harmful ways of being. So some people, right, can't be reasoned with, and they'll take pride in the strength it takes to resist being converted away from their point of view, right? We don't want to make excuses for people in an attempt to make them feel good when they're doing bad things, right? Like sometimes they need to acknowledge and take ownership for the bad rather than us enabling, right? And reinforcing by trying to soothe them and comfort them and justify their bad ways of being, right? So sometimes we need to just love people at a safe distance. This goes back to love dragons. If
Yeah.
you get too close, you're going to get burned, right? You can send them notes, send them gifts at a distance. Healthy boundaries are necessary components for self-care, because without those boundaries, other people can make you feel depleted. They can take advantage of you. You'll be taken for granted. You'll be intruded upon, and those poor boundaries will lead to you experiencing more resentment, hurt, anger, and burnout. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a big one for sure. I think, like loving people from a distance, like that's okay too. And I think, at the end of the day, like if you don't set that boundary, then you're also harming like other relationships with yourself, with other people, because of that drainage,
Mm-hmm.
because you're not taking that time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or
So
distance.
in the book Earth Heroes, Champions of Wild Animals, Jane Goodall says sometimes you have to leave the ones you love in order to save them. Right? So something to think about. As Yogananda said, if they don't repent within a year, then you have to let karma take its course and send them away. Right? So
Yeah.
And if we're setting boundaries, we cannot tell people what to do, but we have to tell them how we'll respond if they breach our boundaries, right? So
Mm.
if you start getting like, emotionally abusive, the conversation is over and I'm blocking you. Like if you start making up more lies, I am not talking to you. I'm not
Mhm.
responding to you. The conversation is done. You can either do nothing and just shut them out, which sends a lot of a message, right? In terms of what was inappropriate, or you can say something, but just know that usually the less you say, the better, because difficult people have a way of twisting the wrong meaning out of anything you say, right? So,
Yeah.
it's not necessary to mix with difficult people. It's not necessary. It's often better to love them from a distance. Um, you know, you can look at it like God is in them trying to straighten out the crookedness of their hearts, right? Some people enjoy being destructive to other people's peace and happiness. They secretly enjoy it, you know, like predatory wolves. Like they go and seek out fights. You try to create cooperation, they create combativeness,
Right.
right? So it's like love the good and pity the wicked. Wickedness is a disease of mind, as Boethius said, the philosopher. Um,
Hmm.
so there's no way to get along with villainy because it feels no obligation to behave correctly. And so we've got to realize, there's no true friendship among villains because they can't trust each other because there's no integrity of their word. There's no honor, there's no honesty, right? So the main thing here is to identify blocking beliefs we have about setting boundaries, right? So here's a blocking belief, and we want to identify this right now. It's like, okay, if you have to set boundaries, a lot of people, there's a resistance to setting boundaries. And here's one. Somebody might say, well, it's selfish to do this. It's too selfish of me to just set boundaries. But the truth is, the empowering rebuttal to this would be that protecting your energy as needed allows you to give from a full heart. And therefore, it's not selfish, right?
Right.
Do you have any other thoughts on how our subconscious might yell back an objection to any sort of healthy boundary we try to create?
Um, Maybe not like feeling like you're there for them when they need you, but
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like, like a cycle or like a domino effect, right? Like that's the way that I see it. It's like, okay, yeah, of course, in your head, you're like, okay, well, then I'm not there for them when they need me. And, maybe they're going to do something like because I didn't support them or whatever it was. But then it's a domino effect because then you're not doing what you need to take care of yourself and help people at your best capacity, like give from a full heart. Like at that point, you'd be giving from like a half heart because, you're not
Yeah.
dispensing your energy as best as you can. Right. So it's a hard one.
Yeah. And we might think, if I get out of the way, then they are freed up to find the help that they really need right now. Right. Like sometimes we can think me being around them is not helpful to them and it's not helpful to me. Hence the reason we're in this situation. Right. You might have all the best help and wisdom in the world, but they don't want to hear it from you for some reason.
Mhm.
Right. So we got to realize it's not helpful to me and it's not helpful to them. So,
Good point.
I am actually helping them by getting out of the way because now I'm less of a distraction so that they can move forward and discover new people, new insights, new wisdom, and new understanding. They can't do that if I'm distracting them, right? So sometimes we need to get rid of our desire to be the saving hero for everybody.
Mm.
And, now sometimes people will say, oh, but, in there can be a lot of situations where people have family that can be very toxic and hurtful and mean spirited. And just realize that, just because they're family doesn't mean you actually have to spend any time with them
Yeah.
necessarily,
That's
especially if it's not good for you and if it's not good for them. Realize that you have a greater family in spirit. Don't get too focused on human family that's an accident of birth, right?
That's it. I feel like that's a really hard one for people to grasp,
Yeah,
though.
you got to see the greater world as your family.
Yeah.
See the animals as your family and the plants and all other beings as your family. We need to just have an expansive view of what family really means, because people get too myopic in their vision to their own detriment. And then they get this family pride thing going on. And it's all just, you know, an inflated self-importance for this biological family coincidence, right? Which it to their own detriment, right? We want to just do what's best and see greater family in all beings. And that
Yeah.
might be, I mean, that's a separate discussion we would have at some point,
Very
right?
valid.
So,
Valid.
yeah, so I think, you know, to conclude this, I'll tell a story to conclude this subject, and it comes from, it's called Buddha and the Courtesan, and it was Yogananda told this story in the Self-Realization Fellowship lessons. I'm just going to tell it in my own way because I can't, you know, remember everything about it. But basically the idea is this, that, you know, at the time the Buddha was you know, young and attractive, and he's going around from village to village and sharing wisdom, and he's got a following. And eventually he goes to one village and there's a beautiful girl, and she's like, she just wants to be with him. She's just like all over him, and you know, all of his followers are like, oh no, we're gonna lose him. Like, who's gonna be able to resist this gorgeous woman? Like, she's everything you could want in a woman. And you know, it was a good ride, but I guess this is where it all ends with this whole Buddha thing. But you know, the Buddha was like, now's not the time for me to love you. And they left. The Buddha left, and he left her behind. Set a healthy boundary on it, if you will. Now's not the time for me to love you like this. Okay. So I think it was a while later, might have been a couple years later, Buddha wakes up in the middle of the night, and he's wakes up his posse of people, and he's like, we got to go. And they're following him all through the night. And I think sun comes up, and there's a big tree, and they walk over, and none of them have any idea where he's taken them. He's just not talking. And they walk over, and there's a body at the base of the tree. So Buddha kneels down beside the body, and he's like, and then everyone realizes, they're like, oh my gosh, it's a leper. And the leper has been cast out and is dying all on their own. And the Buddha puts his hand on her and says, do you remember me? Now is the time I'm going to love you, when nobody else will love you, to show you my love is true. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, it's that beautiful girl from a couple years ago. She became a leper. And now he's there to love her and like be the one that's there for her when no one else will be. Right?
Oh, wow.
So I think, and as the story goes, he healed her of her leprosy, and she became a devotee of the Buddha. And, you know, I think it's a beautiful example on a type of love we can all strive for, which is unconditional love. And sometimes we need to know that now is not the time to love you is the right answer with some people in our lives, or not like this, right?
Right.
Like now it's like the time to create some separation so you can go through the experiences you need to go through, right? Like sometimes we need to let it be, but we need to just never ultimately give up on anybody, right? And just be the one that can, at the end of the day, no matter how ugly or repulsive somebody might appear internally with their habits and behaviors, almost like leprosy of the mind, body, and spirit, that we can always appreciate their capacity and inherent potential for divinity and goodness within them that's there, untouchable no matter what. So I think a lot of it can just be like, just leave it to, rather than leaving this solution to our ego. We always think our ego needs to solve it. It's just like, just leave it to God. You know, like just understand that this is all happening for us. Everything could change in one day. You know, but just learn to let it be with the love dragons, and remember that sometimes it's not good for us to, we're all learning how to love better, and there's a maturity to that. We think we got to smother everybody and be in their face constantly to love them, and we have to be present with them in their lives at all moments, and that's not necessarily so. You can love them, by participating in your own self-understanding, right? And learn more about yourself and become wiser yourself. And that could be a gesture of love for everyone you care about, because you're less likely to create disharmony for people if you know better. That can be loving. Go away and learn for a while, right? Like that can be loving. So anyways,
I love that.
anything else you want to chat about on this topic? I feel like we've talked on length about this. Any thoughts?
No, that was a great discussion. I think very helpful.
Okay, so in those moments when you feel yourself getting pulled back into those old tendencies and you have a resistance to the situation in front of you, how might you anchor yourself back in a greater acceptance and understanding of the situation?
How
How might you find peace with it when people are difficult to love? How can you find peace with it?
To me, I think it just would be a function of like just like taking a few deep breaths and then just like grounding myself in like a statement or whatever it is, like having that statement, right? I think a majority of it I know my strength is I feel like I do have a decent understanding of like these same concepts that we talked about today, but it's just in that heat of the moment, it would just take me like just a minute, hang up the phone, leave, like, just a breather just to actually like ground myself in the beginning. And then maybe I'll just get better in terms of reactive time as we go
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. So I think a good thing is to recognize that when we have that reaction, it means a part of our subconscious isn't convinced yet.
Right.
Like, do you know how you ever get like a bad song stuck in your head and like, I don't want to be singing this song. This song's horrible. But I find myself whistling it when I'm walking down the street. It's like, what the heck?
Yeah.
So sometimes we just need to get a good song stuck in our head. And by that, I mean like a good phrase or sentence that can
Okay.
help us stay grounded. And we can decide what that is. Of all the things we discussed today, there's lots of them. One could be, in the moment it happens, to ask yourself, well, what's good about this? What can be learned and how can I make it better? Right? You can follow that. You could remind yourself that, a saint is a sinner that never gave up. Like,
Mm.
maybe they're spiritually sick right now and they're just sleeping in their divinity, right? Just see the best in them. Just know that, when we pay attention, the wrong way does become the right way. They're on their journey, learning things in their own time, in their own way. So that's the key, is just find what's going to be that good. What are we going to anchor ourselves in? What wisdom or reminder? Because the biggest challenge for all human beings is it's not necessarily a lack of wisdom or perspective. It's just that we don't remember what needs to be remembered.
Yes. And you've said that before. Yes.
So we just need to keep reminding ourselves until it becomes automatic. We need to discipline ourselves. It does take work, right?
Yeah.
So it can be rewatch the recording or just listen to it in the background. Just let these perspectives permeate your consciousness and become the fabric of your thoughts.
Okay.
And maybe watch it again next time and think, okay, I want to pick a sentence here or there. And then I want to really embed that sentence into my consciousness so that I can see things from that perspective. Okay. Or maybe you can just say, God, help me see this person the way you see this person, and leave it at that. Just that every time, like,
yeah.
Give me a God's eye view on this. I don't want to see this from my limited human perspective. Why would you want to see it from this perspective? This is a horrible way to look at things. Like, don't do it. Don't let me suffer like this. I surrender my free will on this. I don't want to see it from a human perspective. Something to think about. Okay. Awesome work out there today. I thought you did a profound job in bringing this, and this conversation was your idea, right? So I thought you did a great job in this, and I honor the gift you've given to other people who might benefit from this conversation, watching the recording. Who knows how many years down the road, hopefully when they really need it.
Yes.
Right? So, because we're all in this together, just figuring out how to succeed at being human. And I think it's all about just helping each other out. Like, let's just make this a group project and everybody just do the best you can. And when other people aren't doing as well as they could be, let's try to support them in the most appropriate way. And sometimes that appropriate way is to have a healthy detachment, just give them a little bit of healthy space to come to their own conclusions on better ways of living, right? Just like love dragons, sometimes, you can have a pet dragon. You can't get in the cage there with them. They're going to burn you. It's just going to happen. And there's some people, you get too close, they're going to burn you for now. Right? And we just need to be able to recognize that and love them anyways. Okay.
Yes.
Let's do go team on 3. Fist bump, we're out. Okay.
Okay.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Go team.
Thanks, Brendan.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.